Today we're talking about sketching by intercepts, and we're going to start by making our foldable for the day. So you need to take that blue piece of paper with the grid in the middle, and we're going to fold one of the sides over to the black line and make a crease. And then we're going to fold the other side over to close up the book. If it doesn't meet exactly, that's okay. I have a little gap there, and that's just fine. So we're actually going to start by doing the question that's on the sheet on our foldable. So to sketch by intercepts, we use three things. We use the x-intercepts, the y-intercept, and the vertex. So on the front, I'm actually going to write that down. We're going to put sketching by intercepts, and then I'm going to list the three things that we use to sketch by intercepts. So the first one is x-intercepts. The second one is y-intercept. And the last thing we need to make our graph is the vertex. On the inside, we're going to put the steps that we're going to use to graph the function y equals negative 0.5x squared minus 2x plus 6, which is the one listed on our sheet. So I'm going to open up our foldable, and unfortunately my pen bled through a little bit. Hopefully your pencil didn't. On the inside, we're going to put the first flaps, number 1, our x-intercepts. X-intercepts are the places where our graph crosses the x-axis. So that would be this point here and this point here. And we've already talked about how to find x-intercepts by factoring. So to find your x-intercepts, the first thing you want to do is factor your equation and then look at what makes each bracket equal 0. So I'm just going to make a little note here that we're going to factor the equation. And that we're going to set each bracket equal to 0. And let's give that a try with our equation. So we have the equation y equals negative 0.5 x squared minus 2x plus 6. So to factor that, just zoom in a little here, what I'm going to do is, I really don't like factoring when I have a decimal, so I'm going to see if I can divide the negative 0.5 out of the whole expression there. So I'm going to say y equals negative 0.5. And then I'm going to figure out, what do I need to multiply negative 0.5 by to get negative 0.5 x squared? X squared. What do I need to multiply negative 0.5 by to get negative 2? That's a little trickier. And if you can't figure it out, you can take negative 2 and on your calculator divide by negative 0.5. And it works out that the answer is 4. 4 times negative 0.5 gives me negative 2. And then what do I multiply negative 0.5 by to get 6? You could do 6 divided by negative 0.5, or you could figure it out in your head, and it works out to be negative 12. Okay, so I've taken out a common factor of negative 0.5, and now I'm going to see if I can factor the trinomial that's left over. So I know it's a trinomial because it has 3 terms. It has the square, the x, and the constant. So we're going to take a look and see what times what equals negative 12 and adds to positive 4. So let's see. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to positive 4. So things that make 12 would be 12 and 1. I don't think that's going to work. 6 and 2, 3 and 4. So I think our best bet is the 6 and 2. In order to get a positive 4, it would need to be positive 6 and negative 2, and that would also multiply to give me negative 12. So I'm going to take my x squared plus 4x minus 12, and I'm going to replace the 4x with 6x minus 2. Don't have a lot of space. So y equals negative 0.5. So we have x squared plus 6x minus 2x minus 12. Okay, we're going to group together the things inside that bracket. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. Out of the first pair, they have an x in common. The second pair has a negative 2 in common. So that's going to be x times x plus 6 from the first one. And I take a negative 2 out, and I'm left with an x plus 6. All right, still ignoring that negative 0.5, I see they both have an x plus 6. So this is going to factor down to negative 0.5, x plus 6, and then left behind would be my x minus 2. Okay, and now that it's factored, we're going to set each bracket equal to 0. So I have a negative 0.5, and that doesn't have an x. So that really isn't going to help me in trying to find my x-intercepts. I have x plus 6, and I'm going to look at what makes that equal 0, and x minus 2, and figure out what makes that equal 0. So I'm going to take x plus 6, we're going to move the 6 to the other side by subtracting. To get x equals negative 6, that's going to be one of our x-intercepts. And then here, x minus 2 equals 0, add 2 to the other side to get x equals positive 2. And that's my other x-intercept. And that actually matches the ones on the graph. This is positive 2, and this is negative 6. So I know that we did it right. So I'm actually going to open up the flap here, and I'm going to mark my x-intercepts on at negative 6 and positive 2. All right, I'm going to close that flap back up, and we're going to do step 2. We're going to find our y-intercept. What color? I use green for that. All right, so to find our y-intercepts, if I take a look at the graph, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and that would be where x is 0. So all the points on the y-axis have an x value of 0. So to find your y-intercept, all you have to do is substitute in the value x equals 0. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the equation, and you can use the original equation or the factored equation. I think I'm going to take the original equation, and instead of x, I'm just going to put in 0. So negative 0.5 times 0 squared minus 2 times 0 plus 6. And then I'm just going to work it out. 0 squared is 0 times negative 0.5 is still just 0. Negative 2 times 0 is 0, and 6 is 6. So 0 minus 0 plus 6 is 6. So our y-intercept is going to be at y equals 6, which matches what's on my graph. This is definitely a 6. So on my graph on the inside, I'm going to mark on my y-intercept of 6. And then the last thing we need to do is figure out the vertex. And that's going to go on the inside panel right here. And that's step 3. That's our vertex. So finding the vertex can be a little tricky. We're going to start by looking at the graph. The vertex on this graph is the highest point on the graph right here at negative 2 and 8. Okay. Now, since a parabola is symmetrical, which means it's the same on both sides, to find our x value, it should be exactly in the middle, in between the two x-intercepts. So what we want to do when we're finding the vertex is take a look at your x-intercepts and find what's exactly in the middle. And there's two ways to do that. One way is to count, right? You can count in between your x-intercepts and find the point in the middle. And the other way is we can do a little bit of a calculation where you add your two x-intercepts together and then divide them by 2. So I'm just going to make a little note in here. So you're going to find the x part halfway between the x-intercepts. Okay, and you can do that by just looking at the graph, or you can add your two x-intercepts together. So I'm going to try doing that. So x is going to equal, we said here our two x-intercepts were -6 and +2. So I'm going to add -6 and +2 together. So -6 plus 2, and then we divide it by 2. It's like finding the midpoint between, so when you were in grade 10 you learned about midpoint. It's the same way you find midpoint. You add together your two x coordinates and you divide by 2. Now -6 plus 2 is -4. And -4 divided by 2 is -2. So the x part of our vertex is going to be at -2, which matches what we saw on the graph. Now if we take a look at the graph again, to find the y part, I have to do something to calculate how high it's going to be. So what we do is once we know the x part is -2, we sub -2 into our equation. So to find the y part, by subbing x into the equation, so my equation was y equals -0.5 times x squared, so -2 squared, minus 2 times x, so -2, plus 6. -2 squared is +4 times -0.5 is -2. -2 times -2 is +4, and 6 is just a 6. So 6 plus 4 is 10, minus 2 is 8, which is exactly the point we're looking for. So we can mark on the point -2 and 8, and there's our vertex. So the last thing we need to do is just connect all our dots to make our parabola. So the vertex is the highest or lowest point, which means I know the graph is going to have to go down. I see that the y-intercept is here, and it's 2 squares down and 2 squares over. So I go 2 squares down and 2 squares over on the other side, and I mark on the mirror point so that I have a little bit better picture. And then I'm better at drawing it if I draw it this way. So we're going to draw the parabola in. It should be nice and curvy. Go all the way to the end of the graph with arrows. Same thing on the other side. And there's our graph. So now all you need to do is tape your foldable onto your book. Let's see if we can see where it goes. In the blank space. And then if you check out the next video, you'll see how to do the rest of the questions.